I've found as a sociologist, the literature on social connection in, in networks almost over encouraging people to view the problem with connection as a problem of quantity
Oh, yeah.
alone, not quality. The quality with which you comport yourself, it almost gets second, if any, attention. But it's as if we talk about connection as only quantity, like that matters. And you hear it again and again when an article's published. Oh, we've lost one average friendship over the last decade. Like that's somehow some monumental important thing. And everyone then gets the idea, well, oh, I need more. Right? It's sort of like a to-do list. Let's add more. And they forget quality. So I was very careful there. I did not want to encourage this quantitative obsession with connection to the exclusion. And the reason being is there's this beautiful research in aging literature showing that with age, the amount of time we spend in connection declines. And yet, well being increases up until the very end of life. And it's because we start to prioritize quality over quantity. And we prune and cut out all the chaff and the useless and the relationships that are just there but don't add anything to meaningful contact. And so I think we're missing that so much. So in that chapter, I really wanted people to get the message. It's quality, people. It's not quantity.
Which is the complete opposite to what we've been taught in the social media emergence, which is
Mhm.
numbers, numbers, likes, likes, and meanwhile the levels of loneliness and perceived disconnection has skyrocketed, and that was really for me a realization that I needed to be part of the change. Hello and welcome to season 2 of Rediscovering Connection with me, Shelley Doyle. If you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning, then hello and thank you for your patience. I've had a 6-month hiatus whilst I've been completing my master's, which is now done. I'll be collecting my parchment paper this Thursday, and I have my graduation ceremony in a couple of weeks. So I've been focused on the social health and wealth of remote and hybrid people leaders. My guest today is someone whose work has deeply supported my understanding of social well-being. Professor Corey Keyes. Leading up to this interview, I have been listening to your book on Audible all weekend called Languishing, How to Feel Alive Again in a World That Wears Us Down. So I'd love to just welcome you here, and brand new book this year. Like, how is life for you right now? And how is this new book being received in your life?
Well, thank you for having me, Shelley, and it's wonderful to meet you. And I cherish the time and the opportunity to talk about social connection, which, given all the podcasts I've done regarding, coming in after in the wake of my book, we rarely. It's funny how none of the interviews really engaged much of that topic. It really is a distillation of my life's work, and frankly, I don't think it did it justice because editors and publishers want things differently than we academics do. And so I tried to thread a needle in between being a little scientific, which is where my heart is, but I'm also an artist, a storyteller. And the book felt really good to write. It was
Mm.
therapeutic, to tell you the truth. So I get these amazing emails out of the blue from people who have been deeply affected by the book, but the story that I told, which was
Mm.
the background about my own journey on because there was a personal journey that accompanied the scientific journey and I never told anyone
Mm.
about that for all the years I did my science. And yet everyone just assumed it just comes out of nowhere, and it's just this amazing creative process. But in fact, it was part of healing a lot of trauma for me.
We teach what we need to learn, and
Mm.
passion comes from pain.
It
There are a
is.
few things that I've learned over the last few years. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Either it will break you for a while, or badly, or that it will form you in ways, if you can let it in, but be gradual and kind with
Mm.
yourself as you let it in. Because I had to face it. I thought I could outsmart and outrun it and out, you know, perform it. And no, it was there. So, but I learned to be gentle and kind and patient with myself in the process.
And how have you had decades of researching this topic? Um, I would love to understand how it's felt to be researching a topic that you feel deep down, or you
Mhm.
certainly felt for many years. And I understand you must have so many of the tools and strategies to get beyond it, to get to flourishing. But
Mm.
we all have a set point in all facets of our life. So we might have a set point for happiness. We can still have the tools and strategies to work our way up, but there's going to be, without proactive effort, perhaps we come down to a certain set point. Would the same be true for flourishing?
The last time I taught my seminar on happiness, which was in 2021, we had been reviewing evidence on that very fact, and the evidence was that it, there are definite ways in which life events can change your set point. You really need, if you want to flourish, you need to be prepared to deal with bad things.
Mm.
Don't let them um, take down your set point and change your course in your life, right?
If we continue to negatively ruminate on them.
Mm. Well, yes. I think it's also, I love this work on acceptance and commitment therapy because I'm deeply influenced by Buddhism. And I think there's this notion that people they just want the good stuff. Now, if the bad stuff, I want to get through it quickly and move on. But that idea of suppressing it or moving on is not a way to deal with negativity. And I think rumination it will come back. It's just like the white bear studies that Dan Wegner did. He would point out and have his research subjects say, think about a white bear. Imagine a white bear, right? And then now don't think about this while we're working on the next task. But having just suggested it and then told them not to think about it, it became more available.
Mm-hmm.
And it kept intruding into their thoughts while they were trying to do something else. And that's the point I take away from acceptance commitment there. You must sit with and deal with the bad things when they come.
Mm. There's there's something I've heard recently about, when you get a song trapped in your head and
Mm.
it's like an earworm, it just keeps going, right? You have to get rid of it, you play out the whole song. So it's the same
Yeah.
with circumstances, right? You play it out, get it done, and then you can have the acceptance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think it was the Zygarnik effect, right? You have to let, right? But I'm really testing my intro psychology information. But for me, and I love music. I don't know if you're a music lover, but my wife and I love it. I will get a song in I'll call it my mental repertoire, and it will be there because there's a period I'm going through. And I just think of it as there's like these little epics, like a couple days, that's life. And then things will shift.
Mm.
And I do that with a lot of things. Like I had long hair. You saw my book cover. I had long hair for a long time. And then suddenly I went in. in the last 6 months, and I didn't tell my wife, and I came home with this short hair, and she was like, "Oh my God." And I said, "Yes, I was putting down, I was leaving behind a period in my life, and now I'm entering into a new period."
Mm. Yes, I love it. I love it. And I've recently gone kind of red, kind of strawberry blonde, which I've never been before. So I guess this is me like finishing my thesis, and it's taken me 4 years to get through this master's. So it's
Mhm.
I've taken the scenic route, as I
Yeah.
as I like to say. We spent 4 months of it living in an eco village. Um, to see how it was to live in community. Um, and it was an intense experience. We ate together 13 times a week with like 12 to 20 other human beings.
I wish you had explained that in your talk because I listened to your talk, your
Oh,
TEDx
really?
talk, and I thought it was rather intriguing. I was trying to fill in, well, why was that community immersion challenging? And I
Uh-huh.
suspect because it comes out like you're not used to in this day and age community being much like water coming out at the end of a fire hose. It takes a while to get used to that kind of togetherness.
There was so many parts of your book that spoke to me. One of which was just about friend versus friendship, like what conversations in friendships mean in
Yeah.
comparison to just being a friend. I really appreciated how practical these insights and illustrations were to really let people
Mm.
know how it feels and helping people to emulate what it is to be in friendship.
Yeah. Well, and I'm almost going to raise this as a question to you as well, because I've found as a sociologist, the literature on social connection in, in networks, almost over encouraging people to view the problem with connection as a problem of quantity
Oh, yeah.
alone, not quality. The quality with which you comport yourself, it almost gets second, if any, attention. But it's as if we talk about connection as only quantity, like that matters. Like, and you hear it again and again when an article's published. Oh, we've lost one average friendship over the last decade. Like that's somehow some monumental important thing. And everyone then gets the idea, well, oh, I need more. Right? It's sort of like a to-do list. Let's add more. And they forget quality. So I was very careful there. I did not want to encourage this quantitative obsession with connection to the exclusion. And the reason being is there's this beautiful research in aging literature showing that with age, the amount of time we spend in connection declines. And yet, well being increases up until the very end of life. And it's because we start to prioritize quality over quantity. And we prune and cut out all the chaff and the useless and the relationships that are just there but don't add anything to meaningful contact. And so I think we're missing that so much. So in that chapter, I really wanted people to get the message. It's quality, people. It's not quantity.
Which is the complete opposite to what we've been taught in the social media emergence, which is
Mhm.
numbers, numbers, likes, likes, and meanwhile the levels of loneliness and perceived disconnection has skyrocketed, and that was really for me a realization that I needed to be part of the change because I moved over here during the pandemic. And I've been blessed with being part of really rich friendship groups through my life. So thankfully I haven't had to face feelings of loneliness I'd say acutely during my
Mhm.
life up until when I came to Canada. And then we were thrown back into lockdown just as we were starting to make a few connections, didn't have anyone to bubble up with. My children were so young at the time that they weren't kind of giving me the social interaction that I needed. I kind of think now,
Yeah.
4 years later, even my relationship with my kids is very different. So they can give me a lot back now. But at that time, I was feeling deeply disconnected, albeit having access to everybody I've ever worked with, been friends with, on social media. But I just felt going on there, it was like being punched in the guts. It didn't help to see people that used to be part of my life having a wonderful time. It made it worse. So I was like, we need a new way. And to go to that, yeah, we need to think smaller. One of the really curious findings from my research with 1,200 leaders, one of the questions was, how many people do you feel at ease discussing private matters with? And we
Mm.
looked at local friends, um, friends more than 30 minutes away, relatives, professional connections. Of the people more than 30 minutes away, the numbers were so small. I think it was 58% had 0 to 1 connection beyond 30 minutes that they felt at ease discussing private matters with. Obviously, some others, there was like some others would have 9, but the majority, the numbers were incredibly small. And really, it was those people in that 30-minute proximity that they
Yeah.
have these trusted relationships with. When you think how amazing technology is, and we are not trees, we do move around, but
Hmm.
still we keep kind of our trusted connections very, very close. Um,
Well, isn't that it? I think this is interesting because think I don't feel comfortable talking to people about private matters in any other setting except one-on-one, in person. So you can text a little, but I wouldn't. And I sense more people are I'm not the exception. And I think we missed the point, right? The loss of confidence that researchers in my field have documented isn't that we don't want them or don't take the time. It's just that we, especially Americans, have been encouraged to simply disperse and go wherever your career takes you. And we damn with any loss of any closeness that comes with it. And so you don't, you have to recreate shop in a new place, in a new town with nobody you know. And you don't, the people you used to confide in, you left behind. And I'm not going to confide, and I suspect most people in your study would say, I'm not going to confide online, and no, even the telephone seems awkward to me. It doesn't seem like the place where I talk of my deepest concerns and my fears and my vulnerabilities. It's just doesn't feel right to me. Maybe others are okay with it, but I'm telling you, we missed the point. I don't think people are losing confidence, they're moving away from confidence.
Exactly. We're
Right?
moving
That's the
away.
problem.
And I think in all facets of our life, we leave jobs very easily, we leave home
Hmm.
very easily. And I think if word got around of the importance of connection and grounding, there's this definite trend of like the return, isn't there? There's so many stories of the return. You go and you learn and then you return. And you can understand why you take all
Yeah.
that wisdom back, and then you can ground back in where you've got familiar faces and trust. But then I guess on the flip side, I go back to my hometown now, and it's, you know there's loads of people that I don't know anymore because loads of new
Right.
people have moved there.
Yeah, and it's same with my little town of Three Lakes in northern Wisconsin. It's if I and I went back there because my sister moved back because that's the only real home we ever knew. That's when after we were adopted. And a lot of people have left. And so, I mean, you're in the same situation. As you're saying that, I'm trying to imagine myself in 2 centuries ago with my ancestors in their tribal settings. where the journey would be you would go out there for a couple days or a month and you would go on this journey and you would learn and you would bring it back to your group.
Mm.
You would always come home. Now, there are animal species, yes, like every spring our bird feeders get ransacked by young male bears because they get kicked out of their right, and they have to go and create a whole new one. We're not like bears and other animals where but at least in a couple hundred years ago, and for thousands of years, our ancestors evolved in these tribal settings of hunting and gathering. And so the journey was you go out there and you learn, and then you bring everything you learn back and you share it with others. And that's not what happens today. I think that's one amazing predicament. We call it progress, but I don't know if I raised the problem, but I don't have a solution to tell you the truth, Shelley. I think we need to understand this one thing. I remember being in Italy and having to give some talks, and then I hosted some Italian students, and I asked them, "What made you choose the college that you went to?" They said it was the closest one to my family
Mm.
because they want to go home almost every weekend and cook and break bread with their family and right. That's not my US students. They look at you like, oh my God, you would choose close to home. Imagine if you got into Princeton, but you got into a state school close to home. You're telling me you would choose close to home over Princeton? Yes, some of them would. But Americans, and I think a lot of Canadians, oh my God, I'm going to leave it all behind because now I get to go into the top five university. And yet they're miserable, some of them, disconnected, lonely, suicidal, depressed, languishing. And they
Mm.
wonder why.
Mm-hmm.
Because we leave behind the very thing. I'm not going to romanticize family. Family wasn't a great place for me. And, we can talk about this double-edged sword that I write about in connection and social relationships. It's where I've experienced most of my deepest pain and trauma. But it's also the place and the birthplace of the greatest loves and loss.
Mm.
So we just leave it behind and with this idea of like accomplishment and resumes. But here's the fascinating thing that I didn't get a chance to write about. In every study I've ever seen published, doesn't matter where you go in the world, out of the three components of well-being on my measure, emotional, psychological, and social well-being is always the lowest. Always. I don't care if you go to Asian, communitarian, communal societies, or you go to what we call our individualistic society. Social well-being is dead last. In other words, it's much harder to achieve any of those five dimensions of social well-being. It's easier to achieve the psychological and the emotional stuff. And I've been thinking lately, this whole idea that human beings are social creatures may be overblown. Yes, we are. But just because we're social creatures doesn't mean it's easy. It's, forgive my words, it's goddamn hard being social. As you know, and that's what I loved about what you're talking. You were very honest. Put into and immersed into a very communal situation, it's overwhelming. Why? Because I think we're social creatures, but we also need, some of us as introverts need more time alone, but even normal extroverts need solitude and time to reflect. So we may be social, but social is not easy.
You spoke in the book about mattering. And I often speak about the people that matter. And in the book, you wrote about the people. Do people depend on you? Do people listen to you? Do people pay attention to you? Are you an important part of someone's life? Would you be missed?
Would you be missed?
Mm.
Yeah. And I wrote about this professor that he's on my mind now. And I wrote about the email exchange we had as I was writing about this book. and how we could have just sort of treated this as a student professor relationship and just moved past each other on. But there was something there, and we both felt it. And to this, I just lost him last week. He died
Mm.
at the age of 91, and he was like a father to me. And in it, besides the dedication in the front of my book, which is the most important part of my book, by the way, because those, my Nana and Papa, were the most important earth angels I will have ever known on this planet. And Bill Brown's right up there because he was like a father to me ever since my college days as an undergraduate to this day. And I am so happy. And I'm sad and happy at the same time because he saw that, he read the book,
Mm.
and he knows he mattered so much to me. And I tell people in that chapter, don't wait to tell people this. Tell them now. You may miss the opportunity. I never, ever left my house once I was adopted, and ever without hugging and giving a small kiss to my Nana, because if I never came back, that would be the last thing I wanted her to know. I loved her because she mattered so much to me.
Mm.
We don't, come on, people. It's such an important act that we can do every day. Every day.
Like, I have this curse that I miss people all the time. I miss people come to my mind all the time that I miss. But the same was true when I was back in the UK. I come from a very distributed family. I'm always thinking of people, I'm always missing people. Um, so sometimes I will reach out and say, just thinking of you, I miss you.
Hmm.
And they say it can take 7 seconds to send a message, and you never
Yeah.
know how that might impact someone's day.
Yeah, and I also love adding, like, I was thinking of this time
Mm.
together when we did this.
Oh, I love that build.
That is a beautiful addition to a sort of, I'm thinking about you.
Mm.
I just have to let you know this. You might you're not out of my heart or mind. We're separated now. But this is the beautiful thing about human beings, having just talked about the fact that we're distant and we can't always share the things that we want to share because we want to do that in person. But they're in our hearts and our minds all the time. And we don't tell people that because I wrote about that wall in my book. They're there symbolically, but they're here.
Yes,
They're
yes.
here.
And in Dunbar's number, he talks about our consciousness being able to hold 150 people relationships.
Yeah.
And I believe that with the emergence of social media and just so many, we're being exposed to so many people. Some of those in people that have been important to you, that have mattered, can drop out of that 150 consciousness because we're not exposed to them. So, like, mapping can feel hard, but I think it can be really important to map the people who have mattered in our life, whether or not we
Mhm.
kind of reach out there and then. But doing so can help our natural impulses to reawaken. I have to be very, very mindful of the
Mhm.
time that I spend exposed to other people. Even in so much as during my master's journey, I started watching a series called Virgin River, which is basically like a soap opera. But it helped because there was a set of characters. I got to know the characters. I didn't need to introduce new characters to my life at that stage. I had enough going on. So it was like when I needed to decompress, I'd put on
Mhm.
this show. So that, yeah, that helped me to kind of contain the people in my life. Anyway,
Yeah.
I digress.
Well, I think it's intriguing to me, that you said it was a curse to miss
Mm,
people, and I'm I don't think it's a curse, having given what we just talked about. I think it's a blessing and it has to be cultivated. It just reminded me of my wife and I just celebrated our 39th anniversary. And together we've done so much together and traveled and explored the world. But if you were to walk through our house and I could walk you through, there's nothing hanging on the wall that doesn't represent moments that we had and experiences we had together through connection. So that every day, my house is a constant reminder of all the things and people, because it wasn't just us. These are often with other people, and usually people like my professor, like Bill Brown, people like parents and my grandparents, and friends, and a couple of friends that we had. So at my house is deliberately curated from lamps to art, a lot of art and tapestries that we picked up all over the world that were extremely embedded and saturated with moments of meaningful connection. And so it constantly reminds me, I live in it. And I don't know
Yes.
why I did that, but that was a very deliberate thing. And I suspect because I knew up to the age of 12 what it was like not to be wanted and to be ultimately alone and disconnected. When I was adopted and taken in by my grandparents, it changed so much for me. Yes, I needed to be transplanted, but I realized connection was at the heart of healing. But the first 12 years was connection is also about the traumas I carry. But the people, I realized that people really mattered.
So when we have a feeling that we miss someone, spending a few minutes to really like tap in and remember a time when you were last together, the way that you feel when you're together. And then if you feel called to, perhaps reach out, but otherwise just enjoying that you had the blessing of those times together. So you
Yes.
can like relive the happy memories.
When I was teaching, especially in the spring semester, my happiness course was filled with seniors who were graduating. Because it took them a while to get into the class, but I was glad it happened at the end because it would make a couple points. One is that you can feel happy and sad at the same time, right? We're not wired so that the absence, happiness is just the absence of sadness. And just because you're not feeling a negative emotion doesn't mean you're feeling good either. But they would resonate with this as the closer they came to graduating, the more sad and happy they
Mm.
felt. And I said, this is a beautiful moment. Embrace both. Don't just embrace the happiness, embrace the sadness. And here's why. Because it's telling you you are leaving behind something that meant something to you. Do not ever forget that. Sadness is not something to avoid. It's there to tell you you are losing something that matters to you and that you invested something here and that you will be leaving a sadness, but you're also happy because all that work and achievement was worth it. And the sadness is a beautiful thing too, because you invested yourself in things that you have to leave behind now. And they got it. And I got it just recently, 3 weeks ago, my very senior dog, and oh, I still miss him. He had to pass on. We cared for him in his frailty as much as we could. And I'm like, and I heard this again and again with people who just lost a pet. Sometimes I felt when I was so sad that I didn't ever want to do it again. But then I
Mm.
realized that would be the greatest loss of life to not reconnect and love something else as much as I loved the dog that just died. That's it. You can't have one without the other. And that's the beautiful thing about connection. It's just this bittersweet thing that's what makes life so beautiful.
And what about reconnecting? When I spoke
Mm.
to Dr. Kiffer Card, he said in all of his research, that was one of the hardest things for people to reconnect, even though the positive benefits of reconnecting can be so great if it is someone who's really mattered to you and still does matter to you, but something, distance or time has come between you. Is there
Mhm.
anything in your work or in your experience that might help people to reconnect?
Not in my work, but personally, I think doing justice to grieving is so important. I can't tell you how many times I've cried. And I do that in front of my wife, and I do that when I'm walking out there and with my friends, and they go like, "What's going on, Corey?" It hurts to lose something in someone you love. And I think that part of doing it justice, I'm using that word in a warm sense, giving it what it needs. You have to feel it so that you can let it go. Because once I think I'm over this, I will look at all those pictures and remember all the good stuff. Not the fact when he died and how much I miss him. I will live and relive all the good stuff, and
Mm.
that's all I will carry forward. For me, that makes it possible to reconnect. It's just something about that transition from feeling sad about seeing an image of that person or animal to suddenly feeling, oh, happy and joyous and content and serene at seeing the same image. When you do that transition, I suspect reconnecting is not only possible, it's almost necessary. It's like, wow. Because I think there's a danger of not doing grieving justice, that
Mm.
you will not want to get hurt again.
Oh yeah, we have so many tools at our disposal to just suppress and distract. And
Hmm.
I think as part of my research into loneliness, like what has come through multiple times is that people don't really know what that feeling feels like because they don't allow it to even come. They're just distracted with screens and yeah, so as part of my program that I took these leaders through, the first 2 weeks was a social media detox. And like that's not always easy because you start to feel feelings that you haven't allowed yourself to feel for a while.
Hmm. No, I read about this study that's been written about a good amount, which is when college students were brought into the lab and they had to sit in this room which was silent. It was sort of like a room where audiologists test hearing. So it was silent and they couldn't bring anything in with them. They had to leave their backpack, their phone, everything behind. It was deeply disturbing to them. And 50% of males shocked themselves with a very toxic and noxious shock. 25% of the females did the same. And they knew they experienced the shock before they went in. So the researchers wanted them to choose something they knew would be painful. So what happens is this, I read about this, languishing is the same thing. It's such a deeply disturbing silence and an invisibility and emptiness that you will do anything to feel something rather than nothing.
Mm.
And that's the modern problem. And we're not facing it. Languishing and because languishing, by the way, is baked into a lot of languishing. Loneliness is baked into a lot of languishing.
Yeah,
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 and I think people don't realize that there's three questions that get at a deep disconnection. And so a lot of people who are languishing are disconnected in addition to other things. And it's really disturbing, so much so that teenagers, when I was writing the book, a study comes out of Hungary, and teenagers engaged in non-suicidal self-harming behaviors at a much higher rate the more severe their languishing.
because they want to feel
They
something.
want something rather than nothing. So quietness today is when you enforce quietness, it feels like punishment and it's sort of an induction into languishing temporarily, and people run like it. And I read about the ancient Christian monks who talked about acedia. which became the eighth deadly sin, which is the precursor to languishing, they describe it the same way. They would seek distractions from it because that empty, haunting feeling is so aversive. People will fill it with anything: alcohol, drugs, sex, you name it, and even self harm. Social connection is a skill that we're not practicing. And I think we want it to be orchestrated. It's like you want to go to events so it happens rather than you thinking that you have the ability and skill to do it on your own. And we did it on our own for thousands and thousands of years, and we can do it on our own today because that's how we're built. It's just a skill we're not practicing. And
Mm.
I write about that. I hear people always talking about, I got so much on my plate. And as an academic, I can't tell you how many times I heard that. And I got so sick of hearing it to the point where I got very snarky and told them, well, just sit down and eat a little bit so that you can make room on your plate. So it's because we're letting life pull us out of ourselves and we never practice the skills for creating the life we want.
Mm. This feels like it's leading us really beautifully into the opposite of languishing, which is flourishing.
Yeah.
So I'd love to maybe just hang out in that space a little bit with you and just feeling like what flourishing really is. I took a few notes from your book about being a combination. I think there's 14 different points of what really makes up flourishing. Just a couple of them is warm and trusting relationships, but
Mhm.
also having a purpose in your life.
Yeah.
So it's not only connection, but it is really that intrinsic motivation for knowing that you're doing what you're good at, what's leaning into your skills and talents.
The thing I find fascinating is that more and more people are taking up this research on flourishing. And I just use the word, to tell you the truth, be honest. I wish I hadn't used the word because now it's everyone's sort of thinking they're studying flourishing. I used the word flourishing as a stand-in for mental health because those two words are very confusing to people. And I found that personally and then academically. Personally, when I would say I'm studying mental health, they would think I'm studying mental health problems or mental illness. I said, that's not what I'm studying. And then this Canadian research study was done on almost 2,000 adults, and they were asked a question. Here's a set of words: mental illness and mental health. Do they mean the same thing, about the same thing, or do they refer to different things? And 56% said they refer to the same thing. And that's not true because my research makes it very clear the absence of mental illness does not mean you're mentally healthy. And so I couldn't use the word mental health until we tried to clear it up, and it's taking a long time. And so there now are people, I don't study flourishing per se because that's an abstraction. That's almost something we're inventing and placing on people's lives. Mental health, I think, has always been there. It's just been ignored. And I think of my work as discovering the presence and absence of good mental health because we were so focused on mental illness and its absence for so long that we didn't really understand there was anything beyond that. So I want to be very clear from here on out. All those people who are coming along, they think that flourishing stuff is really great. Good luck. I study mental health in its absence because nobody before me paid attention to it. And it was an empty category. It was the absence of mental illness. And so when I use the word flourishing, I'm referring to good mental health. And you only have to have 7 out of the 14 signs that are measured in my questionnaire. So you also, when I use the word flourishing, I'm not saying you have to be Superman or Superwoman. There's a good enough. You get to pick, by the way. There's no prescription in my model either. I don't tell you you have to have certain qualities. There's 11 signs of functioning well. You get to choose any 6 you want to prioritize in your life. And then you combine it with at least One of the three: feeling good, happy, satisfied, or interested in life. Usually you don't have to bother with the latter, Shelley, because feeling good about your life is a outcome or a product of prioritizing functioning well in your life. And isn't it interesting? Five out of the 11 are social, and nobody talks about the social side of our health. Or no, there are people now talking about it. But I did my dissertation in 1995, and I was the first person who actually looked at social health as something that represented our personal health, and you need to measure it, just like blood pressure and other things. So if you don't have a good sense of contribution, there's a sign that something's potentially right with your mental health. Because human beings need to feel like they have something to give to the world. And I'm not talking about mattering. I'm talking about, do you have something of value to give to your community or your family, or, right?
I'm
Belong.
wondering
Yeah, go ahead.
on the social coherence one, I'm wondering if anybody could say, yes, I can make sense of what is going on in the world right now.
No, no, and here's the thing. I was just up in Winnipeg, and I gave a talk to teachers because there's this big initiative on teacher mental health because teachers are leaving the profession at alarming rates, and there's not going to be enough teachers for our kids, people, because we're not taking care of our teachers. But but that's another side. When I talked about that dimension, there was this laugh in the crowd, but it was not a kind of, it was an uncomfortable laugh. Like a, if Brene Brown epitomized it when we talked about shame. She said, that was not a comfortable laugh. That was an uncomfortable laugh. And it's true. But isn't it interesting? Human beings are meaning making, sense making creatures. Gestalt psychologists would put these dots out there on paper, and guess what? We see images, we connect the dots. They're not disparate in our mind. And when we can't make sense of what's going on in the world around us, we retreat. Or we let other people tell us what the hell is going on in politics and society and culture, and they'll just divide us into camps that serve their needs. So coherence, oh my God, it's at its all-time low. But here's the fascinating thing that I didn't get a chance to write about. In every study I've ever seen published, doesn't matter where you go in the world, out of the three components of well-being on my measure, emotional, psychological, and social, social well-being is always the lowest. Always. I don't care if you go to Asian, communitarian, communal societies, or you go to what we call our individualistic society. Social well-being is dead last. In other words,
Mm.
it's much harder to achieve any of those five dimensions of social well-being. It's easier to achieve the psychological and the emotional stuff. And I've been thinking lately, this whole idea that human beings are social creatures may be overblown. Yes, we are. But just because we're social creatures doesn't mean it's easy.
Mm.
It's, forgive my words, it's goddamn hard being social. As you know, and that's what I loved about what you're talking. You were very honest. Put into and immersed into a very communal situation. It's overwhelming. Why? Because I think we're social creatures, but we also need, some of us as introverts need more time alone, but even normal extroverts need solitude and time to reflect. And so I think we're overblowing this social nature of ourselves to the point where the data and the studies that use my measure show it very clear. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. It's hard to have a sense of coherence. It's hard to have a sense of belonging. It's hard to have a sense that you're making any contributions to the world and society and community. It's hard to be accepting of other people. And it's hard to feel that you belong to a society that's growing and becoming better and that you might be part of that. It's hard work. So we may be social, but social is not easy. It's easier to do the psychological and emotional stuff because that's all about me and I. The we and the us, oh,
it's hard work, but like so is having a consistent gym routine. But we know if we want to have the
Mhm.
fitness, if we want to have the strength, if you know, it doesn't have to be at the gym, but you know, moving our bodies can sometimes feel like hard work. But we can see visibly the positive impact. So, helping people to understand that these other
Ah,
parts can also be hard, yes, and it can feel
mhm.
like work sometimes, yes, but that rumination that you can have will possibly disappear because you won't even think about if you're lonely or disconnected anymore. It won't even be part of your consciousness because you understand your social needs
Yeah.
and you design your life in a way that can satisfy those specific needs.
Mhm. Yeah, some friends and I were recently talking about spiritual fitness, and I love the word fitness and the idea that
Yes.
somehow you have to work at being spiritual, and you have to have certain prerequisites developed. In the same way, if you were to mountaineer and climb Everest, you can't just go out there and just buy the equipment and think you're ever going to get anywhere. You have to uh, prepare yourself so that you have the ability, the stamina, the strength, the skills. What about social fitness? I suspect we're missing something when we don't realize that human beings need some stamina and skills and ability and in a circumstance as well that is conducive to using those skills in a way that serves others and themselves.
One of the things that came up during my interviews was on fear. And of the leaders that I spoke to, the ones that felt very socially healthy or even socially wealthy, they were part of established groups and part of like different social groups, maybe sports clubs or whatever.
Yeah.
But those that weren't really expressed a fear of joining a group of people that they didn't know. And I found
Mm.
I found this quite interesting.
Because I think that the old adage, nothing ventured, nothing gained, is very important there because it will be hit and miss, but you have to go out and explore. I'm just thinking in an admission of my own life, one blessing of accepting the fact that I'm an alcoholic is that I had to confront that. Um, so I have this amazing daily fellowship that has been a, a blessing in that regard. Some of my deepest friendships now come from the fact that there are people that we have been in this setting where we share all these things, very personal things, and now we do things separately. We'll have coffee every Thursday, me and my buddies, and we'll talk about these books, these amazing books, and just. But that was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. Was that
That was
through Alcoholics Anonymous?
Alcoholics
I
Anonymous.
hear
Yeah,
really
exactly.
incredible things from others who have been through that journey. Like it is almost a rite of passage.
Oh yeah, I just picked up a book, Seeking Wisdom by Julia Cameron, writes about spirituality and creativity as being inextricably linked. Her whole journey started when she had to confront her alcoholism. It's a remarkable thing. It's not the birthplace for everyone for these connections. So that's not the way some approach it. But I thought, what an amazing thing. There are some people here, when they talk, they share such interesting things. I'm going to seek them out. And there are people who will come up to me after I've shared things and we'll start talking. But I had to share something. I had to have a reason for being in that setting. We had to be on the same plane, a kind of equality
Yes.
right? And we had to be facing our fears. We had to face our vulnerabilities. We had to face the things that reduced us to things that we never wanted and imagined we would become. And
Mm.
yet out of that was the birthplace of deep connection.
Mm.
There's this book called Spirituality of Imperfection. It's written by people who have had to confront that. But that kind of fellowship there is the birthplace of some of the best connections I have right now.
You say in your book, for real intimacy to form, it has to be a two-way street.
Mhm.
It must have a
Yep.
mutual sense of equality.
Yeah.
I see you. You belong here. We are the same.
Yep. And I
And
read about this professor who did that when I was a college student. He was a professor. And yet the way he treated me, I was equal. We respected our positions. We didn't have to operate out of them, though, entirely. That's why we connected and stayed connected throughout our lives because he saw me in him and I saw myself in him and vice versa, despite huge status
mm,
differences. And every day we can do that. We need to stop operating as out of our positions in society as if that's the only person you are. Because a boss can treat an employee as equal and caring, because that's as easily as anyone else. But you won't be able to if all you do is operate out of being a boss.
mm. Well, I must say, inviting you on my podcast and you saying yes, it felt like a huge stretch for me. So I'm absolutely blown away and honored that you took
Oh,
your time and your beautiful dog has hung out with us as well.
yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't covered today, Corey, that's really present for you and that you feel that you would like to share today?
I think in the spirit of the idea that what I shared about that, this couple of things that I think we're hearing too much about social disconnection as in terms of the amount matters. And reclaiming connection is about having more. No, I think we need to have more conversations about what's the substrate, what's really there underneath connection that really makes some connection so beautiful and meaningful and other connection vapid.
Hmm.
The other is that I think we use the word our social nature as if that's the epitome of what we should be good at. And I think it's just the opposite. I think need to be kinder, both to ourselves and to others, because social connection's really messy. It can be very messy. Just look at your own love relationships. I have a wonderful marriage, but my God, it's like there are times when it's just bonkers. And let's be honest with each other, it sometimes doesn't make sense. And that we recognize when there's rupture and disconnection and we attend to it. And that's what's beautiful about relationships that matter. They're hard, but they won't get better if you don't attend to the fact that a lot of social connection has rupture and disconnection. And it's there because that's what makes it meaningful. Working at it, repairing, saying I'm sorry, having trust despite the fact that sometimes someone did something that made you feel like, oh, we should have done that. And doing genuine apologies, not just like I'm sorry, here's what I learned, and I understand this matters to you, and I'm going to be more careful about that because I care about you. So it's messy. We're social, yes, but that doesn't mean we're really good at it. It's a skill and it takes work. And even the best relationships, my marriage, which, oh my God, it's the best thing besides my Nana and Papa that ever happened to me, is a messy, messy affair that's so beautiful in the end. It's like finger painting when I was a kid. It's a fun, beautiful, messy thing. Just go in it and have fun.
Corey Keyes, it has been such a great honor and privilege to have you here with me in this moment in time. So thank you so much. And I'm so excited to be able to talk about your work with a little bit more integrity that I really know what you're doing and why. So yeah, thank you so much for this time and for sharing some of your insights.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me.